council meeting in Seward. Chief, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Tonight's roll call: Butts.
Here.
Kreitz.
Here.
Cease is excused. Osenga.
Here.
McClure.
Here.
Buckland.
Present.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is citizen comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearing. Those who have signed in will be given the first opportunity to speak. Time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 36 minutes total speaking time for this agenda item.
Madam Mayor, the first person signed in is Jesse Bradshaw.
Thank you. Jesse at the dais, or at the podium, please.
Hey guys,
Hi.
I'm Jessie Bradshaw. I'm just here to introduce myself, trying to throw my hat in the ring for one of the openings on P&Z, and just thought I'd say hi. I've lived in Seward for about 5 years. Came to coach the rowing team and discovered that we love the town, love the community, decided to stay here and set up a family and start a family here. And I guess 3 reasons why you should consider me is, one is, first of all, I love this town, I love this community, I love all the things and all the groups that are getting really involved in this town. And the second thing is, one of my day job is as a designer for a tech company, and I represent, or I believe that I can add sort of a representation of a growing slice of Seward's population, which is people who can live anywhere in the world and choose to live in Seward because it's awesome. So I think that can be. I think that's a growing demographic, and I hope that I can serve the community in that way. The second thing is talking about dedication. I was an Olympic. I trained for the 2012 Olympics. Trained on the U.S. national team, and I want to bring that same passion and heart to the city and helping plan the future. And the third aspect is just that I love the town and I love you guys. So that being said, consider me this afternoon when you think through that process.
Great. Thank you so much. Next, Madam Clerk.
Madam Mayor, next signed in is Steve Lear.
Steve Lear, and I live inside the city, and I have sent an email that I think all of you received, and that's what I want to take a few minutes to talk about. I became aware of this 20 acres that was donated to the borough, and the borough handled that through some paperwork that's in those attachments that I gave you. And I thought at the same time that I might offer to, we own some property, my family owns some property out at the head of the bay there, out in the mud flats. It's further south than the old radio station that's no longer there, but that old concrete building that used to be there, it's south of there. And it really doesn't have any value. But sitting on the airport committee, I realized that one of the big problems of that airport problem was that river. That's got to be controlled, and they're really 2 separate issues. And this map here shows some of the partials, not necessarily all of them are on there, but the ones in yellow are already government owned, either U of A or DNR, or Fish and Game, airport, the state. The ones in blue are owned by the city already. I think there's 6 lots there. And the ones in pink are the ones that are privately owned. And they used to be owned by Seward people probably 30 years ago. And most of the names you'd recognize, there's probably only about 4 names on there that I would recognize. And the fella that donated this property, there's 2 families. One is deceased, and I think the person that did this work with the borough lives in Kenai, and the other guy lived down in, and I called him, he lives down in Washington, and he was aware of this transfer, but he wasn't really interested in it. I mean, hadn't signed any papers, so I didn't really talk to him too much, but I thought this would be a good opportunity to kick this property in there and have planning, maybe figure out how we can get this deeded over. And one thing that I would mention, I called one of these people, because I happen to know the person, he lives up in the valley, and his wife and another person own one of these pieces of property. Can I go a little longer?
We'll suspend, we'll suspend the rules for about 1 more minute, please.
Yeah, and I asked if they owned it, and they said, well, no, my wife Terry doesn't own this anymore. It's been turned over to that other person. So you see, there's probably a little title problem. There's probably some paperwork that hasn't been done. So this is going to be not real complicated, but it's going to probably have to be handled with care to make sure there's title and there's no snags out there that'll come back and haunt you. But I'm going to look to the city to tell me how to do this. And I'll probably be giving planning a call in about 3 weeks, 2 weeks, and we'll figure out how to get it done, whether we can quick claim deed it or however. But it should be simple and easy, and we should do it. And this might kick that off.
Great.
So I hope we can get going on this. Does anybody need this?
Maybe
I'll give it to Jackie.
Great. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Laird. Thank you. Next signed in, Madam Clerk.
Last signed in, Madam Mayor, is Cindy Eklund.
Good evening, Cindy Eklund, Inside City Limits. My current term on planning and zoning ends at the end of this month, and I submitted an application to be reappointed to planning and zoning. I've been on there a while. I also represent the city on the Borough Planning Commission and Plat Committee, which I'm not at their meetings tonight because I'm here. But thank you for all your help in the work that we do on the commission, and I would love to continue working through some of the priorities you've attached to the commission. I also wanted to speak towards Ms. DeMoss, Liz. She and her husband are on their anniversary trip to Seattle, but I think as a realtor, she would be a good fit on the commission. I don't think we're represented. The realtor side of the city is represented on the commission or the council at this time. And 20 years of experience in Seward, family members that live here, kids, nieces and nephews in school and such. I think she'd have a good voice to add to the commission. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, did you say that was the last person signed in?
Correct.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Carol Griswold, City Limits. So I sent you all an email. I hope you all had time to read it. Sent it on Friday. So this is in regard to Ordinance 2020-001, amending the land use plan from R1, R2 to OR. At the January 17th council meeting regarding this ordinance, the city attorney was asked to provide guidance on illegal spot zoning. And there was a quote about that, just to prove it. The information is not included in the packet, in the attorney's report, or in the ordinance. According to the city clerk, it was not received by her office as of Friday, February 21st. As you know, I believe that according to Alaska Supreme Court ruling, this rezone is an illegal spot zone and should be denied or amended to R2 in conformance with the land use plan. 1 acre is too small. Our outdated code needs to be updated.
So just checking, so
Yes.
I think we have a public hearing item on this, so should Mrs. Griswold hold her
Is it a public
comments
hearing?
Yes, thank you. It is
Oh.
actually a public hearing.
I thought it was not.
So I know,
Okay.
sorry to
Yeah, well,
stop you midstream, but
that's
you'll
fine.
be able to start again at your 5 minutes with the
Okay.
public hearing.
So then I would like to say, please encourage anyone who applies for these positions on planning and zoning to take heart if they're not appointed, because there may be openings coming up soon. And I so appreciate having these new faces show up in council Member Kreitz, appreciate your throwing your hat in the ring. It's just so nice that people apply, and they should not be discouraged if they don't get in at first, because with encouragement, they will come back, and we want to encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Hearing and seeing none, next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I move for the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any changes, additions, subtractions to be proposed by the body? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could we have a vote, please?
Voting on tonight's agenda and consent agenda. Kreitz,
Yes.
Buckline,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Butts,
Yes.
Olsenga,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
Your agenda is approved, and approved on tonight's consent agenda is Resolution 2020-016, authorizing the city manager to utilize the on-call engineering contract with R&M Consultants Incorporated for engineering support services for the replacement of G, K, and L floats at the Seward Boat Harbor in an amount not to exceed $137,059 and appropriating funds. Resolution 2020-017, delegating authority to the Kenai Peninsula Borough to implement, administer, and enforce the provision of the Uniform Code to the Alaska Intergovernmental Remote Sales Tax Commission, and supporting adoption of Kenai Peninsula Borough Ordinance 2020-03. You have also approved the February 10th, 2020 City Council regular meeting minutes, and you have scheduled joint work sessions with the boards and commissions to review annual priorities on March 9th, 2020, starting at 5:15 p.m. for the Port and Commerce Advisory Board, 5:45 p.m. for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and 6:15 p.m. for the Historic Preservation Commission.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is special orders, presentations, and reports. Proclamations and awards, there are none. City Manager's report.
Don't really have anything to detail too specifically that isn't already in your report unless you have specific questions or.
Are there any questions for the City Manager? I'll let you go. Go ahead.
Okay, just want to, I've been participating some with the Wellness Week, and I think that if the city would like to participate in somehow, maybe with the police department or fire department, to show some community support. If we can kind of, I don't know if we agree on like having a little bit of police, like maybe introduction to the Nixle portal, and some fire safety things during Wellness Week could be really helpful to the community.
So Councilmember Buklana went to one of those meetings. Could you clarify the dates? Do you remember the dates on that?
There are a few events that are happening, so maybe finding the best event, but that's from the end of, I believe it starts on March 27th through the census to the first week of April, and ending with the kids fair, I believe. The spring kids fair.
And what would be the point of contact for that, Katie?
Yeah, I think there's a smaller committee too of people who are in charge. Katie.
So I did send both chiefs an email. Clinton just texted me that he got it.
Okay.
Sorry. And I think I talked to Lieutenant Nickel as well, but I don't know if I mentioned that to you, Chief. And we talked about the, what was the other thing, Tony? It was the seasonal workers orientation they do.
Yeah, and that would be a good thing too. I just thought more for the community, it's more of a local thing for the Wellness Week, but the seasonal orientation would be good. I think any participation by the police department would show a little more public interest and more visibility to the public.
So I'll follow up with both of them and make sure they're aware of everything.
Yeah,
But
I'd like to attend those events. I'm going to be trying to attend as many of those wellness events as I can, so if you could keep the council updated would be great. Are there any other questions for the city manager? Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank the fire chief for the detailed report on the all of the I know it sounds bad, but like the violations and everything, so that kind of knowing what's going on with everything else, it's interesting. I know that a place that I work had an extension cord issue, but we're not the only one. So, but it's good to learn about those things, and it's helpful too, because we thought for a long time that was okay, and it wasn't. So keeping everyone safe is great, and seeing that we were not the only one is good too. Thank you.
I just wanted to just point out for the public and maybe ask you if you wanted to mention anything from our Juneau trip, just so the public knows the next meeting, both Councilmember Buckland and I will have written reports that will be included in the packet. But I don't know if you wanted to say a few things about that trip or.
Maybe I'll do that when you both present your reports and add a little bit, if that's okay.
That sounds good. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments with the city manager? Seeing none, the next is the city attorney report.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Alexander. I am not Holly Wells. We have similar hair, and that's about it. She is my partner. We are both owners in the firm Birch Horton Bittner Chereau, and I am here in her stead. The report is in the packet, and it describes some of the things we've been working on, as well as the sort of new contractual arrangement we're working under, but I'm happy to answer any questions council has.
Councilmember Buckland?
I just had a question on the new billing that we have. When there's overbilling, and I saw not overbilling, but when we go over the allotted amount of hours, how then would we see a breakdown of what was each partner and how much each partner or legal, like if it was a paralegal? Because all we see right now is just the overage, right, was $14,390.
So the invoice will still be fully detailed out by timekeeper in terms of paralegal or billing associate or shareholder.
Okay.
So the invoice will be detailed that you guys get.
So I've never seen an invoice, so is that because it's a client confidential or?
I'm not sure how the city treats it, but it is something that is provided to the city, and I believe it would be available to council.
Yeah, for quite a while, I've been emailing those out, and I don't recall doing that recently. I don't know if that's just because
I don't think I've ever seen an invoice, but maybe if we could get those from now, then that would answer my questions.
I've seen them, but I don't know where it dropped off at some point. But maybe if we could attach those to the attorney reports and just email them out.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Senga, did you have any other questions for the city attorney? Seeing none. Next on the agenda is other reports and announcement, Chamber of Commerce report.
Good evening, everybody. I did submit my report, so you guys have that in your packet. I just did want to go over a few kind of highlights or maybe things that have happened since that. One is this last Saturday we had our Chamber of Commerce Community Awards on Saturday at AppTech, and it was the first time that we ever had one that was completely nominated and voted by the membership, and so it was just a really great time for people. Not only the people who won, but also to the nominees to hear about what they're doing in the community. And so we've received some great feedback from that, but I did want to let you guys know, for those who weren't there, who did win awards. And so just for the Community Service Award, we had a really high scoring tie. And so we had two winners. One was Councilmember Buckland, and so yes. And Amy Hinkins. The Steward Business Person of the Year Award was Kevin and obviously Stacy Lane for the cookery and the Lone Chicharron. The Steward Business Site Improvement Award was Scott Ryerson for the Steward Adventure Station. And then the Board of Directors Award was for Cindy Clark for her 14 years of service to the Chamber. And so it was a really great evening. My next thing I want to highlight is that we did the Steward Marine kind of front is what we're kind of calling it right now. Committee met last Tuesday, and it was a really productive meeting. We're basically kind of prioritizing some items. And right now, we're really focusing on solving some supply chain, expediting, and cost issues to kind of create kind of an economy based together will help us reduce costs and hopefully get things here in a more timely fashion as well. And so we're developing a survey for both goods and services, so that we can get better information to see how we can combine those things for our industry. We're also, that committee is going to become more formalized, and it's definitely going to be something that as we go on, they're going to be the ones driving it, because it should be industry driven. We'll always be obviously a partner with them, but I do think that we're going to be able to solve some problems for our businesses and create some efficiencies kind of as a larger group. So I'll keep you updated on how things go there. And just kind of two upcoming things is we're having a sustainable tourism conversation this Thursday at the Ray Building, and it's ironic, or maybe it's just timely, but this month in the Alaska Airlines magazine, anyone's been on a plane lately, is that it's talking about Alaska companies that are embracing sustainable tourism practices, and it has our own Orca Island cabins. And so, and really, like, sustainable tourism is a very broad, overarching kind of category, and so we're going to be digging into that, but we think it's important that we're being intentional about these conversations and driving some things and helping people talk with each other so we can solve problems and kind of always be in that sweet spot of maximizing what tourism can bring us, but also minimizing impacts and kind of being in there. And so that'll be on Thursday. And then lastly, on Thursday, March 12th, we're going to have the State of the Chamber presentation at the Breeze at noon, and we'll be kind of talking about what we're going to be going into this year on some pretty specific plans, and doing a lot of highlighting and going over what our members survey, those results, and talking about how that's going to change what we do. So.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for, yes, Councilmember Buckland?
Thank you for the other night. It was a beautiful dinner. I love working with the Chamber. I worked with them a lot for multiple reasons, and they're great. And you have Aisha and Kaylee and Jason is amazing, and their staff is really great. I just have some questions that were emailed to me, and they don't need to be answered now, but maybe at the State of the Chamber.
Okay.
The first one was, how does Seward's destination marketing and management budget compare to other communities? Some constituents have concerns about the budget that we have with the city and the chamber. I know the specifics of it. I understand it. I think there's some people who might want more comparison between other communities. I know that there's been some staff change now, and it's addressed in here in the Chamber of Commerce in this report. But will destination marketing remain as one title for someone? Or will that position change and evolve into a different position? And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. I'll just answer that second question. Is that yes, that will stay a position, and we are advertising that as of tomorrow. We just kind of had to go through some processes
Perfect.
When you do a lot of shifts, we're just trying to make sure that how exactly those pieces are fitting with the other pieces, and kind of making sure that what we're putting out there is exactly what we need for now and kind of moving forward. But yeah, that destination marketing and communications will still be that kind of basically similar piece.
One more. I'm sorry, I forgot one more question. I'm really impressed about the Seward Marine Industry discussion and that group that's forming. And this would be another question for maybe the State of the Chamber, but would you see that falling under membership or destination marketing, and the details behind that? So whether it was destination marketing and how it would be driving Seward's industry, or on the other side, growing the membership and the strength of the chamber on the membership side?
I would say yes. But and it's one of those things is that we actually it's a thing that can do both, because we can market who we are as a city and solicit industry here, and market our capabilities, and so it does provide the city of marketing. It fulfills kind of part of the city marketing contract, and also as we grow and people want to become involved in that, it's also a membership piece as well. So it's one of those like functions that we do as a chamber, because we have both sides combined. We can actually provide some efficiencies, and combining this, mutually beneficial type of thing. So, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just one follow-up. I thank you very much for your answers, and I think it's an important thing that we're looking at more economic drivers in the community and just make that we've invested so much money in there. I'm really excited about this approach to it, to drive that other side and to promote more economic stability through diversification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jason. Next on the agenda is presentations, and we're looking at a presentation from the 2020 census. Welcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Griffin. I know a lot of you guys from Seward originally. Grew up here, my mom's in the audience right here. And, Griffin Plush, I'm really happy to be here to talk a little bit about the census today. So I am doing an Alaska, and I have 10 minutes, correct? I just want to confirm, or is that more or less there? Cool. So I graduated from UAS last May and started the Alaska Fellows Program with the 4-Acre Group, which is a nonprofit association in Anchorage for the entire state. I know many nonprofits in Seward are members, and I am helping out with the Alaska Census Working Group, which is a group that you can see some of the members of here on the slide there. That was brought together by the 4-Acre Group as well as Cook Inlet Housing Authority to start thinking about how Alaska can ensure a complete and accurate count in the 2020 census. So, turn that on. So it's a winter program. I'm really excited to be involved with it and be involved with so many different organizations from around the state. And so the Alaska Census Working Group is working on the 2020 census. You can see some of our top priorities here, mobilizing this effort with so many organizations, everyone from the state of Alaska to tons of different nonprofits, to local governments, to the Anchorage Chamber of Commerce is a big partner, to GCI even, including and Alaska Air, including some of our largest private corporations. There has been a lot of input on this work because everyone recognizes the importance of the census. A lot of what I do is involved with the second point there, the statewide education effort. So we have a small team helping produce graphics. Presentations like this one, buttons, has been a big task of mine. I left some at the door there that you're welcome to take. And also helping with recruitment for the 2020 census. Folks around local communities here have been in a process of being hired, I think, for enumerators here, the census takers in Seward. That hiring is happening really soon, and they'll be trained, and actually there'll be people coming door to door. And that's been a really important part of this effort, right? Because having local people doing the census, people perhaps, really is important for people actually responding to it. And that kind of gets to the last point there of conducting outreach with localized partners, with people who are trusted leaders in the community. This is something that the census broadly has put an emphasis on since even, I think, the first census. They realized that the federal government can't really just go out there and run around and try to count everybody themselves, that it really does depend on local input, on partners like the Alaska Census Working Group and like the City of Seward to effectively do a census. So we're helping the Census Bureau with that. They have enough funding to do the census, but some of this early work and to really make sure that it is localized, even if they had a lot of money, would be harder for them to do coming out of their Los Angeles regional office. But they do have an office here in Alaska. So Alaska Counts, as you can see on this slide. This is the campaign that was organized by the Alaska Census Working Group. That organization is kind of a mouthful. Alaska Counts is a really sleek sort of brand that we've been using to get the word out about the census, and that we've been putting a lot of our materials under. You may have heard PSAs on the radio. I know on Alaska Public Media, I hear them pretty regularly. We also have a Facebook page that I've helped monitor and put stuff up on. We have a lot of great resources. Alaska Counts, really our goal, one of our biggest goals, is getting these materials to the people who can use them and spread them, and so that people can deliver accurate information about the 2020 census. So this is our website. We have, if you're interested in helping with the 2020 census, and I'll get to that in a moment of why you should be helping get out the word to your fellow citizens about the 2020 census, you can start here to start finding out some information about it and what information to deliver to the people around you. We have on our website a ton of printed materials like that Census Champion checklist that I handed out, but also like this really basic little fact sheet about how the counting happens. I'll talk about that in a bit. And things that really demonstrate the importance of the census, like this federal counting the dollars fact sheet that I'll also talk about some of the information about in a moment. There's some really helpful resources up there. One thing I'll also point out is that we have a mini grant page. You can actually apply for a mini grant as the Chamber of Commerce recently did and receive the Chamber of Commerce to do an event on the census. It's a really easy application. It's the main thing that I've been responsible for. You can get up to $250 and a package of buttons and things like that to do an event in the community. And I know that Katuchik is someone that they were interested in partnering with, and that there's a lot of places in the community that can come together and work on this. So to get to a little bit more detail. What is the 2020 census in Alaska? Why is it important? Why should the council care? This is sort of our really easy message that we've been talking to people about, and that I would encourage you to remember if you're talking about census with people. It is 10 minutes to fill it out. It is 10 questions that are really simple, less information than you would give on your PFD application. Less confidential information that's more secure, and there are 10 years of impact, right? So the census only happens every 10 years. That data is really important because of how it's used by the federal government. Funding is one of the main things, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The census started on the 21st in Toksook Bay. So there are different ways that the Census Bureau counts people in the country. There is an early effort in rural Alaska that started on the 21st and has been ongoing in the state, the first place to be counted in the entire country. But we will be counted a little bit later along in line with the rest of the country in mid-March. We're in update leave tracked. What that means is that people that we know will be coming door to door. And some more urbanized areas of the country, like Anchorage, they'll actually be asked to respond online first. And if you are from a place that isn't one of those self-response places, so like here in Seward, say you're out traveling, say you're a snowbird, when the census comes around, you can still be counted, and you should still be counted at your regular residence here in Seward. And you can do that at the online portal or by calling the Census Bureau. And you can find that information when it starts on March 12th. At 2020census.gov. It's a really important message, and something that I've been getting a lot of questions about from smaller communities like Seward is, how do I get counted at home? You can fill it out online, you can call in, go to 2020census.gov, starting around March 12th. But if you're here at home, if you're not traveling during that period of time, you are totally going to get a knock at the door from a census taker. And they'll leave a packet that you can fill out and mail in, as previous censuses have been. You won't be have that online option first, like in more popular areas. So that kind of explains a lot of that. I'll be skipping through a few of these slides. This is just information that we have on our posters that is really helpful. Just more detailed information, the kind of stuff that we have on our website on fact sheets. So why? I've already kind of alluded to this a little bit. Why should you care about the 2020 census? Well, because of dollars, data, and democracy. So the dollars side of thing, as I mentioned, and as this fact sheet talks about, $3.2 billion every year of money comes into the state of Alaska based on federal census data. That allocation looks different based on the program. There's 55 different programs that were analyzed in the study that gives you that number. But there's a ton of money that comes to our state, I think more per capita than any other state. And a lot of it comes directly to local communities in various forms. And to nonprofits as well. 18% of those funds go to nonprofits. That's why the FORCA group's involved. So you can see all these things, roads, other essential services, these really are dependent, and voting, right? The House districts and things like that are based off of that data as well. Data, right? These are the different things that the data informs, right? Through various programs and elected officials. I'm sure you guys use census data at various junctures. Democracy, as I mentioned. This has a really important effect on how elections happen over the next 10 years because it decides how districts are drawn. But I have 30 seconds left on the clock there. I'm going to kind of be pretty brief here with this section, just to say that there are a lot of ways you can be a champion of the 2020 census, that you can become engaged on the census. I gave you guys those checklists of 12 things that you can do over the next 12 days, starting from easy to harder, to engage with the 2020 census, to let those around you know about it. This is really important because by letting people know about the census, they can more correctly fill in the information. We can get less people to go undercounted. And I can keep talking there, or open it up for questions here.
Let's go
as
ahead
well.
and do that. Let's open it up. Does anyone on council have any questions? Very thorough presentation, and I think we're going to be getting questions as local government representatives. Where should we send people?
Sure. So I answer all the emails that come into info@alaskacounts.org.
Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely say you can email us, go to our website, or go to our Facebook page to find out more, or to answer specific questions.
Councilmember Buckline?
Valley has a nice setup at the library if there's anyone who has questions. There's
Yeah.
Information and a little display there for them.
Yeah, I should mention that as well. The Alaska Library Association has been a really huge partner in the Alaska Census Working Group, and all local libraries, including ours, I think will have information, but also when the census comes online, has an online form, that'll actually be a place that I think people will be able to access the internet at our local libraries. If you don't have internet at your house, if you didn't get the packet, or it disappeared, you still need to fill out the census, you can go to the library. Yeah.
Great. Do you have a question?
Well, not a question, but I brought this up when our assembly representative was speaking of it too. It's not just money, it's redistricting that makes a difference, because, for the example, Kenai Peninsula Borough is divided up, and each area has to have approximately within the same number of people. So if our people aren't counted, we're going to lose representation basically, and they'll extend further into Sterling. And so it's really important to emphasize to people that they just need to fill out this little form,
Yeah.
For some reason, people don't. And,
Yeah, that's right.
Really important.
It's really important for redistricting, along with the money that comes into communities through programs like Head Start and things like that. So, to emphasize, right, you wonder why people, you mentioned, don't fill out the census. And a lot of the times, one of the biggest reasons people go uncounted is not that they personally didn't fill out the census, but that they missed someone in their household on the 2020 census. Now, there's a couple ways that can happen. The two that I've really been concentrating on with my work with Alaska Counts has been children under 5. That's the single demographic that is most undercounted in the 2020 census. And that is because maybe they're still in the hospital, if they're in the NICU in Anchorage, and the parent down here filling out the census for their house might not realize, oh, I should fill it out, including my young child. A variety of other reasons for children under 5, that children under 5 are missed, but Head Start programs and folks like that should really engage and at least know how to answer those questions for families of children in those programs, Head Start and preschool programs. If you know people who work in those, send them to Alaska Counts, tell them that fact, because every child under 5 who goes undercounted, who is in poverty, actually, that is the direct number that is used for the calculation of Head Start dollars from the federal government. So it's a really clear loss. But the other one is couch surfing students. So if I know some members of the community, some of my friends in high school ended up staying with our family when I was in high school, and they might not have been counted on our census if it had happened then, because we didn't know that they should be counted at that household, because it's the main place that they are sleeping every day.
Great. Well, we we really appreciate your time and your efforts to make sure we get counted. And again, if we have any questions, we'll reach out as you suggested.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Of course.
So next on the agenda is word public hearing items. Madam Clerk, could you read the ordinance into the record, please?
Ordinance 20-001 is amending the land use plan and zoning designation of the west half of Federal Edition, blocks 714 and 17, except lot 7A, block 17, from single-family residential and two-family residential to office residential.
So, and I might just note that this ordinance has already been introduced and amended at the January 13th, 2020 meeting. It had its first public hearing on January 27th and was postponed. It's coming back tonight for a second public hearing and enactment, so it's already on the floor. So what we're going to do first is we'll turn to administration for comments and also to hear your report.
So as I had reported earlier at the last meeting, this was brought forward by a number of citizens in the area that's asking to be rezoned. I've put a map there behind you as council and then right over here on this wall, just a larger one so that everyone can see the current zoning. There were multiple questions that were asked from the council at the last meeting, and I'd like to answer those if you guys are.
Now's the time to do that.
Okay. So one of the questions was asking, the attorney had mentioned, does it publicly, is it a necessity, is it a convenience or a general welfare rezone? Required to do the rezone, and the rezone supports the use and the future use of many of the properties. One is being OR, and I just want to sort of go down just to give you some history. The current zoning of the area of the requested rezone is single family R1 and R2 as intended, and the use of R1 is to intend to provide for a stable, quiet, low to medium density, 1 to 5 dwellings unit per acre, and a detached single-family resident development free from from other uses except for those which are compatible and convenient to the residents of such districts. The requested zoning is used as office residential, and its intent is to provide for medium density residential, commercial, and office development designed to act as a transition zone between the high-density central business district and surrounding medium-density and residential districts. One of the questions that was brought up is about the future land use that is located in our comp plan. It was adopted by the 2030 comprehensive plan and designed as, and designates areas to be rezoned for as two-family residential, which the definition of two-family is a medium density of 1 to 7 dwellings per acre and transitional housing area with a mix of single and two-family units, free from other uses except those that are both compatible and convenient. Recognizing that the primary concern of all land use regulatory actions include zoning to promote public health, safety, and general welfare, as per our code in 15.110 and 15.520, the land use plan proposes states a part of the comprehensive plan is the development of a land use classification system on which base zoning and to guide, I just want to put that out there because guide is mentioned multiple times in our comprehensive plan. It is to guide us, give us a direction. For the land use regulations, and such a classification system should be provided as a balanced, compatible land use mix in order to separate incompatible uses and minimize conflict between land uses. And the reason I bring this up is the current land use map, those are the zonings that are right behind you. You have a section in our town that is a buffer. So you have commercial business district, a buffer of office residential, auto commercial, and then from the east to west or west to east, you have urban residential, buffer of office residential, and residential. So if you're looking at a really broad picture of how our community has grown or moved throughout time since this map was even introduced. The logical way to look at doing a rezone is maybe creating another buffer of office residential. Because office residential is the buffer of all of the uses right there, this zoning action in the future land use does have office residential as part of the buffer, but doesn't make that portion office residential. But it is able to be used as office residential. And so one of the things that I've suggested is that not only does the city look at doing a rezone from A Street clear, to this section, but maybe from A Street to Van Buren, that would include this upper section into office residential, again giving you a buffer. Auto commercial, central business district, urban residential, institutional, a buffer of letting these be office residential, and then you move into a maybe not as busy as 3rd and 4th, but you move into an area that becomes residential from A Street down to Washington. So that is just the answer of one of the questions. We were also asked if it was at least an acre. The area is 1.69 acres, so just to give a clarification on that. And then, does the small parcel zoning constitute spot zoning? And the answer is no, at least my answer and the answer of the attorney. The purpose of zoning, as stated in our comp plan, makes it difficult to isolate one motive as a controlling factor. The comp plan has a devoted section that is a need of affordable housing, but the actual creation of that zoning for it may be and overshows a concern for preserving historical areas, creating economical growth, and dealing with traffic congestion. So when you look at all of those in a line, right now, when somebody comes in to talk to me about buying property or looking at developing property, I use the future land use as a guide, and only a guide. I tell them that it's not set in stone. It is how, in a perfect world, we'd love to see our community. It's not absolute. It's not a must. So then, does the amendment comply with the comprehensive plan? Yes, this rezone will also, if this is accepted, it brings not only more contiguous and flow to that area, it would also bring 3 or more properties into compliance. Right now, we have two right now that are legal, non-compliant uses, meaning that they were constructed and been operated as a business and or, we have a triplex, which wouldn't be allowed on R2 or in UR. A triplex could be brought into compliance. We have some other uses that, again, they were, I hate to use the word grandfathered because, but they have been operating since before our code took effect. So it would bring them into compliance. And then one of the other things that I wanted to bring up is, again, that we use this as a guide. It's stated in multiple areas of our comp plan. And it constitutes and is consistent with one or more of the 9 elements that were listed in our comp plan. And you can find those 9 elements in section 1.1 of the first book of the comprehensive plan. And it states that it lists 9 different things of why we look and use this as a guide. And I already explained that the buffer that we could use, office residential, and then again, I just want to put it out there that the parcel zoning for the purpose of the appropriate boundaries and a proposed amendment based on the alleged benefits of a rezone on the community is what people believe spot zoning, what spot zoning is. This covers and does not fall under the lines of spot zoning.
Are there any questions for administration? We can ask administration questions following the public hearing also. So let's go, we'll go to the public hearing at this time and save our questions for later. I'd like to open the public hearing. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed in?
No, Madam Mayor, no one has signed in.
Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak?
Carol Griswold, City Limits. I would like to refer to this map. Should I go behind Councilmember Butts, or should I use the one back here?
I'm fine either way. Does the clerk have a preference? I don't mind if you step
Okay.
behind the dais if
Okay.
you'd like to. Thank you for asking first.
You're welcome. Council, what I just heard was truly alarming. I'm very concerned about the commercialization of our residential zone. What I just heard, this is a very incomplete map. What I just heard was our valued R1 that goes to Van Buren maybe also become commercialized, which takes away from where people live. I want to live in a town that provides places for people to live. You are destroying a really valuable residential neighborhood. And this is really important to me. It's incredibly important. I can't believe what I just heard. So we're talking about office residential, which allows nightly lodging. A lot of this is about nightly lodging. This property here wants to be nightly lodging. This property here wants to be nightly lodging. And this property is R2, he's already doing a bunkhouse, but whatever. We don't need more commercialization of our residential neighborhoods. As far as spot zone, I had not seen the attorney's report. I have no idea what that is. I was hoping I would have that to refer to. I believe this is a spot zone. There's 6 people here in this very small area that wish to commercialize what is now a beautiful residential neighborhood. And it is small, it benefits them. I don't see any benefit to the community to commercializing this neighborhood. I think we have to protect our residential neighborhoods. So this is office residential. Our code requires if you rezone a zone, it has to be contiguous. That means it shares a property line. This R1 could be rezoned to R2 because it shares a property line. It's contiguous. This is the closest R1. It is not contiguous. This little kitty corner here to R2 is not contiguous. So that is something that needs to be understood. This is adjacent. This is contiguous. So as you rezone, it would go this way. Tung, tung, tung. So I'm just real upset that what I heard tonight would zip this up so that we lose all this beautiful, it's a beautiful neighborhood. It has a salmon stream going down here, a Nadroma stream. institution across the street. There's objections from some of the petitioners about this institution across the street. Schools are often in residential zones. They are good neighbors. They're not there in the summer. They're not there on the weekends. They're good neighbors. We have this beautiful park. It's a quiet street. Parking will be a huge issue if you commercialize all this. The Supreme Court said traffic considerations were a concern. I don't see why this is not an illegal spot zone. It's too small. It benefits a very few people with no benefit to the community. There's issues of negatively impacting the neighborhood character and the quality of life. I love this street. I walk it every single day. It's a beautiful street. I hate to see it commercialized. I hate to see the loss of our residential housing, and I hate to see it spread throughout the rest of our residential zones. And you've seen me, I've written you a long time on this. So I hope you'll see the importance of not commercializing any more of our residential neighborhoods, and please vote this down. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Yes.
Thank you. Cindy Eklund, Inside City Limits. I'm the applicant for ordinance 2020-001. And Seward City Code allows rezoning of property when it meets Chapter 15 requirements. I've listed these sections verbally and in writing over the last 6 months while we've been going through this. Today I sent an email, and then I gave a handout earlier. I've listed findings that support those sections of code, and they're written in red below each section of code, the finding that supports it. So I'm not going to cover those right now. I'm going to move on. I looked up the original section of the city code that defined the office residential district, not commercial, office residential. It'll still be a residential district. And it stated, it's from the 1989 ordinance that established zoning districts. And it said that office residential was low-density residential, commercial, and office development designed to encourage maintenance of the historical character of Millionaires Row on the west side of 3rd Avenue between Jefferson and Madison Street. So that was the start. And then in 1991, almost 30 years ago, Ordinance 1991-649 currently states what Ms. Wild read earlier, that it was intended for medium-density residential commercial office development designed to act as a transition zone between the high-density central business district and the surrounding medium-high-density residential districts. But when you look at the zoning maps in the future land use map that's over here, I don't really see it buffering between central business district and residential. I think it's buffering between the central business district and auto commercial, the way it looks. If you look farther down on 2nd Avenue to the south, you'll see central business district with residential right next to it. There was no buffer, and in the original code, it wasn't buffering the central business district down there. I believe this rezone complies with the comprehensive plan, and I've listed several findings in my handout, but I'm just going to cover 3 of them. Under the first section of that comprehensive plan, under community vision and values for 2030-1, it states in part that the community's vision for itself includes a process for orderly growth. Under land development 2.2.10, we value orderly growth and balanced development that is driven by community consensus in conformance with the land use plan. Well, if you look at the future land use plan, which was part of the 2030 comp plan, that red section behind the part we're asking to be rezoned, that's on 3rd, is designated to go to office residential. So it will be contiguous to office residential, this rezone on the future land use map. So the process to change would be, we'd be in compliance with this request. And under land use 3.21, this is the most important, promote residential and commercial development within the city of Seward and its vicinity in accordance with community values. I think that there's been a lot of community input regarding this request over the 6 months. I think there's been more community input in support of this request, which I think there's actually been more community input on this than there was on the 2030 comp plan. We've talked about the issues we had with the contractor and that, and I've learned a lot about the comp plan, and I would hope that I do a better job helping write the next one. So we've had 5 public hearings. We've had a lot of citizens talk. Seward City Code 1510-115 states that the chapter was adopted in number 8 states to provide for orderly and stable public, residential, commercial, and industrial development. And in the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, development is defined as the act or process of growing or causing something to grow or become larger or more advanced. The Seward City Code allows a process of change. We use plans as our guides, but the Seward City Code is what we follow when we want to enact, make ordinances, make changes. And I request that you approve this ordinance 2020-001, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none, we will close the public hearing. I'll look to council. Is there discussion? Are there questions? Councilmember Senga?
How many lots were we talking about again? Was it 12, 13 lots? I was trying to remember.
The number of lots total
Right,
for
that are in
this
this-
rezone?
Right.
So right now, these 2 are right now zoned R2, but they're included in it, so you've got 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lots. But just so you know, these are double lots.
And those are right now single family?
Yes, these are all zoned single family. These 2 are zoned R2.
So I have a question along those same lines. So you said that this was 1.69 acres. Does that exclude streets and right-of-ways?
Yes.
So it's
just
the parcels?
The parcels.
Okay. I have a follow-up question, if anyone minds. I'll ask my follow-up question. So, Seward City Code does say, except for an ordinance altering the boundaries of existing contiguous zoning districts or an ordinance which brings a parcel into conformance with the land use plan, no ordinance altering zoning within the city shall be considered if the area encompassed by the proposed ordinance contains less than 1 acre, not including streets or alley right-of-ways. So since this is a larger parcel, it does not need to be contiguous with the zoning code that we're proposing.
Correct.
I have another question, if anyone. So, in your agenda statement to P&Z and council, the original agenda statement has a no where we're talking about, the consistency checklist with the comprehensive plan. And I think that was just a no because it doesn't match the bringing the zoning into compliance with the land use map.
The future land use
The future land use map. However, help me understand from your comments today, so the proposed amendment does comply with the comprehensive plan based on the spirit of the plan with the other items that you're talking about, consistency with the zoning patterns. Can you flesh that out a little bit more?
So, when you look at the future land use map, which was passed around to you guys, you see that when, like I said earlier, when someone comes in and we tell them this is a guide for us, we use this as a guide. If it was something that was supposed to be adopted and done right away, then we would have started down at Railway and moved our way up to make it look just like that future land use. But you use this guide to dictate and see how our town is growing. The section that Ms. Eklund was talking about in the future land use, this section would be office residential. I can tell you right now that this section, I think you'd have a really big fight on your hands if somebody came in and you wanted to try to rezone this from auto commercial to office residential, because the uses don't line up anymore. So as our town has grown and as things have started happening, you're no longer just coming down 3rd and 4th for your main goal. You've got these businesses and these larger housing developments that are happening that are pushing outward, and you have these smaller houses that have businesses in them that want to be able to get people from 3rd to 2nd. And by changing it to R2 doesn't allow some of those uses, and would make them illegal or non-conforming or legal non-conforming. And that's like I was saying earlier, this triplex right here, even rezoning it to R2 would not make this a compliant property. This property, in the last 3 years, I've had to turn down 3 different building permits and changes because they are not compliant. And so in order for that, they can't add to their property, they can't even renovate the outside of it because it is a legal non-conforming use. So that brings them into compliance. And so, like I said earlier, and I know Ms. Griswold is upset about it, but I see the uses and I see, things happening that are bringing more people over to this side, and I would rather be able to dictate through conditional use permits and those type of things of certain businesses instead of just letting them and allowing them to operate illegally.
And is it fine if I ask another question? So, you talked in your original about you could see that moving north or south, but at this point, we are only talking about
We're only talking about A to this application, yes.
Are there any other questions? Oh, I do. Sorry, I just thought of what I was going to ask. So this rezone, if someone purchased a lot in an existing structure, is there anything that would restrict them from having a single-family home in the structure?
Absolutely not, no. They can still have a single-family home in an office residential area.
Is there any discussion, council? Councilmember Osenga?
I think my only concern is that over the last years, all you hear is we have no place for people to live. We have nowhere for people to come to live. And every time something's brought up, we can't do this, we can't bring people, there's no place for them to live. And I'm just seeing 13 properties sitting here, some single-family homes, and I'm sure they're all owned, and it's not like they're going to be sold in the next year or so, they're not available, but it just seems counterproductive to me that we're in this position and we're going to take away single-family homes. It just seems kind of backward to me with the position that we're in.
Councilmember Osenga, I understand that. I also understand the requests that come through to planning and zoning and community development. Accessory dwelling units would not be allowed in an R1 district, but accessory dwelling units would be allowed in an OR district. Meaning somebody could update that garage, turn it into a small studio apartment, and have an accessory dwelling unit that would be able to be year-round rental or short-term rental.
If they would do that.
Councilmember Buckland?
I want to go back to what Councilmember Osenga said about housing. I think on those, for what most of the people have come and talked to about what they want to do with the property, it doesn't seem like anybody really wants to change from what it is. There's one art studio, but still there was a question about making an apartment so that would actually have created more housing. So I understand on one side, it can cut housing in one way and it can increase housing in another way by giving that apartment to that one landowner. On the other hand, I think with all these new hotels and all these things coming up, it'd probably be interesting to see what happens after this year, to see if the market is saturated in nightly rentals or in hotels, and a lot of projects going on with hotels. There's micro housing coming up, 11 lots that are opening up in Dora Way. On the other hand, as a business owner, I'd like to see tax generating property, so there's positives and negatives to it all, but from what I see from the people who've come forward to speak to the usage of it was, I saw one positive where there was going to be possibly an apartment, so that's just my comments on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Butts?
I think switching this from R1, R2 into office residential, with this there too, allows an expansion. And I think that's where I like this so much there too. It's not gonna take away from any, we're not gonna kick people out of their homes, we're not gonna, take away from family residence. Somebody can still build a single family residence if they want. But what this allows is the people that are there to expand. I'm sure at one time, a lot of that was all considered residential. But as we grow, we need to expand, and I think this is going to allow that ability for these property owners in this area to, and as well as benefiting all of Seward, to be able to expand a little bit more too, and as we start to grow. And as we look at other places where we're building throughout the city and stuff like this there too. So I wanted to approve this ordinance, just so I want to be able to expand and have that ability to be able to expand.
Are there any other comments or questions? Madam Clerk, I think we're ready for a vote.
Voting on the enactment of ordinance 20-001. Kreitz?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Butts?
Yes.
Buckline?
Yes.
Osenga?
No.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
That ordinance has been enacted.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is unfinished business. There is none. New business, both those resolutions were passed on the consent agenda. We're down to other new business items. Item 3, and this is a scheduled second work session to continue discussing the electric department rates, classifications, utility infrastructure management, clarify billing, timeline, and schedule for pole replacement. And so that will start on packet page number 88. So I might just do a lead-in. I think our first work session was phenomenal. And then I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I know through the city manager to the electric utility manager that you did a great job and answered a lot of questions for the Port and Commerce Advisory Board. So I appreciate you reaching out to that body. They've been doing a lot of good work with looking at some of those issues. So I think there were things, I know farther down on the agenda, we do have some follow-up discussion and some questions being answered. I don't know if you want to just hold off and do that at our second work session, or we could do both tonight, or if we want to look at dates for that next work session.
So, just jumping a little ahead, I do have some handouts, and I apologize for not having it included in the packet tonight. I wanted to get you the most current information I could, and even as soon as this afternoon, I was still working on some of these answers, refining them. So I can hand these out as part of that section to answer those questions, and again, I apologize for not having it in the packet. And I further apologize to Councilmember Kreitz, who you're coming into this conversation kind of in the middle of it, so some of this information may not be exactly quite all clear for you, and if that's the case, then please feel free to contact me. I can, and then I believe the clerk has the presentation that these questions are based on, so that might be some additional information for you as well.
Well, let's follow the agenda, and let's right now maybe just schedule that second work session if that works. what, seems like I know, so now it's a little tricky because it's separated. We could have even thought about putting them together, but, I think it would be helpful to have a second work session if you're open for it.
And we did not finish all the
Yeah,
topics
so
that I did
would be
have in the
great.
presentation.
And you have the prepared, so that would be great. I don't know, I was thinking maybe another 2-hour tops. I think we went even over that, but I think if we schedule something that's just 2 hours, that seems to be a good bite of time. Did you have any suggestions on time, or we can look at the council calendar?
This is March.
March. We have something already we're looking at on the 16th.
Yes, potentially with the
Potentially on the
flood
16th.
board. You have the 9th already scheduled, the 2nd is open.
So, if
Go
I
ahead.
may,
Yep.
I do have vacation scheduled from
Thank you.
March 6th to the 13th.
Okay, that's good to know, thank you. This coming Monday is the 2nd, but I don't want to be too, I mean, that's a week from today, but.
For people to know.
Right, to get the notice out.
And I'm sorry, I just committed to a meeting
Yep, good.
earlier
Good,
about
thank
EV stations in Anchorage.
No, that's good, that's
For
good.
the 2nd.
Thanks for letting us know.
Would it be hard to do it at 5 o'clock on a
Yeah, did we have
meeting
something before that meeting on the 9th, or just our?
You
Yeah.
have a joint work session with
Yeah,
boards
I
and
just said
commissions.
that, yeah.
Duh.
I know, something, I was like, something just
I know,
happened.
it's like, or the 23rd, I guess,
Yeah, the 23rd.
It's open.
Yeah.
before. That gives lots of time for preparation.
Yeah, it's kicking the can down the road quite a bit.
Or we can move up, oops, well, geez.
And just remind you, somewhere in the first couple weeks of March, we'll have that special meeting for the interviews.
Oh, yeah, there's
And I
that.
think you have a work session on a Saturday with the
The 14th.
state
And that's the retreat.
retreat.
Oh, yeah, well, that's, how about the,
Yeah, I guess the 23rd, even though it's quite down the way, that works, because we'll be talking about, after this, we'll have some follow-up questions, and maybe if there's more questions from tonight, then that'll give you time.
5 o'clock?
Let's do 5:15.
When?
Oh, no, because it's before a council meeting. Yeah, let's do 5 o'clock.
The 23rd.
And I won't be here for that one. Yeah, I'll be out of town.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Dale.
No, I understand.
Okay,
I can catch up.
we'll have
Oh,
Cheryl
it'll be
back.
recorded.
Councilmember Buckland?
There's some things we can strike from this, right? Because we've already gone.
Yeah, let's
through it.
talk about
Because like the rates, I thought were really well explained at that PACAB meeting with Jeremy. I don't know if we agree on that or.
I agree on that. I think great job. I don't for mine, so.
Specifications we went over the last time, and that was just going to be a report on what after the the audit, then we would have known, or we've already discussed how those could have been found out, right?
Yeah. And I apologize, some of that's gonna be in the handout.
Yeah, so part of the question is, so it seemed like putting all those items on a list made it unmanageable, but my point in putting a lot of those items down was to just give really clear direction to the utility. So maybe we can just advertise it as the follow-up work session discussing electric utility and not have all those things on there, and then it can be more organic. I'm looking at the clerk to see.
It's your call.
I mean, so if we just say follow-up meeting discussing electric utility, then I think that we've given administration enough direction, and then that would kind of free us to talk about what we haven't talked about yet, but if there's still questions.
Yeah, I do kind of like the specifics of it though, because sometimes there were questions about what people were coming to ask, or I don't know. The one thing why I wanted to keep the specific on there, specific things, was the demand meter project, but like more specifically the policy. I know we discussed that the last time, so that there's a clear policy on the demand meter project. And then like the air to air can go, I'm sorry, But I just
That's
thought
okay.
about, that's one thing that I remember from the last one, that's still on this one, that would have been really good and clarified,
The
because there
air
was, no, the demand meter project, but the policy.
Having a policy.
So, sorry, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, yeah.
Are you talking about the policy that we have on the website, or do you want more clarification on the policy itself for demand meters, or was it more along the lines of air-to-air?
I don't know, it was just the demand meter policy.
Okay,
But that's all clear now, all lined out?
okay.
That, is that,
Yeah, the demand meter policy is on the city's website, you can access that. And that is kind of the prevailing document, and I think Jeremy also helped explain that at the PACAB, that finance is actively going through that, the demand meter readings and
so I guess my only follow-up question to that would be, on the policy, I think one of the things that people had a lot of questions about was who had the ultimate say, and if there was a control of maybe two, a finance and electric utility check and a balance on that, on who got a meter because of the certain power factors that were, you know, or
talked
the.
about it the last time.
Yeah, but there wasn't really a clear, like, there was, it came down to you, which, I don't know, do you want, you know, if you want that only responsibility, or to have a check and a balance of like, okay, well, this is also not the only reason why I'm saying that this is it, but this is what finance had brought as well. So it was a finance component and an electric department component that went together to a clear policy saying that these were the reasons why you received a demand meter. And that way it wouldn't have just fell on one person as a decision by one person.
So yeah, so here's where we're at, because we're dancing
Yeah.
around.
We're just scheduling the meeting.
I
I'm
wonder,
sorry.
no, it's fine, because I think it's just disjointed, because we're setting this work session, but then the follow-up questions are like three more things down. Can we postpone, can we just, move, I know we've already adopted the agenda, but can we, how can we just put this on hold until we're talking about number 6?
But you do not need to schedule it tonight. We can bring this up.
No, I do want to schedule it tonight.
Okay.
But I think where we're running into some problems is we have answers. We're trying to get the title down for the actual meeting. So, number 6 is follow-up discussion and responses to the questions.
Right.
So we're trying to talk about the meeting and what should be on the meeting, but we don't have the responses and the questions. So can we just move on and then schedule the meeting under number 6?
If you wish.
Okay, let's do that. So let's hold off and we'll keep going through and then we'll get back to this.
Oh, no, another meeting.
Schedule a joint work session with the Seward Bear Creek Flood Service Area Board to discuss diverting the Resurrection River back to the East Bank Channel. So I put this item on the agenda, and what this has to do with is we've been talking about the airport for quite a while now, and one of the main impediments to that long runway obviously has been the identification of the flooding, and actually started in 1995. And regardless of how that moves forward, the airport is going to continuously to be threatened by flood damage with that river. So the first step I think that we need to do is schedule a meeting with that Seward Bear Creek Flood Service Area Board. I think at that meeting I'd like to include Steve Lear's proposal and have them start to work, see if the flood board can start to work on that. We need to look at that mitigation plan that was adopted in 2006 by this body and the borough. We need to look at the process that going through Corps of Engineers with the Jab Creek levee. We've just gone through that process to set up a study. So I think that all those issues, meeting with the flood board to get on the table and start to get some direction on what we need to do to mitigate that threat to the community. And one other thing I did put in this agenda statement, because I think that this is a larger discussion that could include planning and zoning, Port and Commerce Advisory Board, ad hoc airport, which makes it, 34 people being invited. So I just really want, I want to acknowledge that all those bodies definitely have a stake in this, but also want to pull it back and just set the meeting between council and the flood board so it's more useful. I mean, obviously it's a public meeting, everyone's invited to attend, but just have those be the specific invitees. And if council doesn't mind, and we do set this meeting, Stephanie Presley reached out to me to talk about what my vision was to have at that meeting, what documents for us to review and what we're looking for. If council doesn't mind, I would reach out to her and get those items together and work with our community development director who also has a piece in that. Vice Mayor McClure?
So did you talk to her about the scheduling of the meeting?
Yes, so thank you for bringing that up. I reached out to her to ask, just preempting, and the Seward Bear Creek Flood Service Area Board would be able to meet on Monday, March 16th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers.
Oh, that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah. So I'll make a motion to set a meeting with the Seward Bear Creek Flood Service Area Board, a joint work session with council to discuss mitigation measures with the Resurrection River.
I'll second that.
Councilmember?
I won't. It's my last week of jury duty, but if there's a quorum, I wouldn't mind if everybody else was there.
Sound good? Okay, Madam Clerk, let's call for a vote, please.
Voting on that work session, McClure,
Yes.
Hosenga,
Yes.
Buckhorn,
Yes.
Butts,
Yes.
Price. Yes. Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That work session has been scheduled.
Okay. Next on the agenda is to appoint 2 council members to attend legislative meetings in Washington DC in April 2020. Madam Clerk, thank you. You have the expenses listed out in the packet. And I'm not sure, I'm guessing it was Madam Clerk. I don't know if administration put that together, but in the past, we've sent 2 council members. I would recommend that we do that. It was very helpful to have 2 people down talking at the state level, and I know that's been our past history and policy. City manager and harbor master going, and the dates look like April 19th through Thursday, April 23rd. So I guess I'll throw it out there if anyone is interested in going on that trip. Councilmember Osenga, I'm looking at you, I was waiting for that hand. And I just might say that you went last year, so it is nice to have some consistency. Is there anyone, so I'll say I'm not able to attend. Councilmember Buckland, would you be willing to go?
I would be willing to go.
Okay, great.
I would also like to recommend, I had talked to Linda Paquette. She's willing to pay her own way. So I would like to know, just because there's a lot of movement from P&Z, from PACAB, if the city would also recommend in sending her as well, but she would pay for her own expenses.
Thoughts?
I don't think that's something we can decide.
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I'm not sure that's something we can decide. If we're not sending her as part of council, I don't know.
She's also on the commission for PACAB. So I thought that there's a lot of projects on PACAB. Some of it is federal funded grants, like the air-to-air heat pump, air-to-air heat project. They focus on a lot of different issues, and I think a lot of things have actually been moving through PACAB. So an experience to kind of meet our federal delegation would be beneficial for that board as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll comment. I wouldn't support that at this time. I think we just need to have it really concentrated with council and administration. Yeah. I would like to say that ahead of time, specific to the airport, I would like to see us reach out and talk to our lobbyist and have a conversation with them, because I think, so I'll just say from our time in Juneau, we did get some very good insight from Ben Stevens, the governor's chief of staff, when we talked about the airport with him, and his very good advice is that we're barking up the wrong tree. So Department of Transportation, 9 federal dollars to 1 state dollar. So they really don't necessarily listen to the state's direction because, you know, the carrot is the money at the end. So his strong advice to us was to work with our federal delegation, and I think the key there is to start working with those lobbyists, which we pay very well, to start giving us some good ideas about strategy on how to work with FAA and actually address our airport. But that is something that needs to be done ahead of time before we get there. And I'd also like us to talk about, you know, when we were in Juneau, they said, what are your top 3? Because you only have a few minutes with these folks. So between now and then, maybe even at the next council meeting, you know, the clerk did a great job and included the resolution with our federal priorities. And I don't know, I mean, we might even be prepared to discuss it tonight, but I'd like to hear from folks what their top 3 are. For me, the airport and also the tunnel would be at least 2 that I'd like to see at the top. Councilmember Buckland?
I definitely agree with you with that because when we went to the lobbyists and they were like, okay, cut it to 3, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then I think we may have more insight on different things, that there are other bills or legislation that's going through that can help with other things, with like the AvTech piece that could be receiving funding. So I think we might need more time to think about it, but I think we, on the top 5, cutting that down to the 3 was very important. But I think it would be more wise to consult the lobbyists as well, because there was things that we had geared to talk to different legislators about, so they could give us a little more guidance on what we should and should not address.
And I might also say that that doesn't mean that we only talk about 3 things when they're in their offices, but we lead with those 3 things, and then as the conversation moves forward, it was helpful. So maybe, Madam Clerk, could you put this on the next agenda so we can think about it and come up with some things? But in the meantime, and maybe to the city manager, if you could reach out to the lobbyist. We do get a great report from them, and I noticed it just came last week, but maybe specific to the airport, we can start talking to them and getting some direction. Councilmember Butts?
I'd like to see this actually move to the April 13th. That's just before you
Okay.
guys leave, and so if we put it on the April 13th.
I would agree with that.
I think that'd be better.
Yeah, that's good. Do you need a vote on that, Madam Clerk? No. Do you need a vote on, I think we're pretty unanimous, sending Councilmember Osinga and Councilmember Buckland. Would you like a vote?
I'm fine with that, no objection.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't see any objection. And I want to thank you both for your time and being willing to do that. And then to the city manager, so if we talk more about this on the April 13th, will that be sufficient for you?
Yeah, and we've been talking to Brad Gilman already about, we register all our projects, and they have all of that at a bigger capacity, but he really kind of dictates our appointments and our schedule there. So they've been working on more than just our appearance, so we just try to be there to support our voice.
That's great, thank you. Okay, now on the agenda is follow-up discussions and responses to questions from the electric department work session held February 3rd, 2020. So I think seeing that information will help us set.
There's 3 pages, 3 sheets, I should say.
Oh, that's coming.
So administration, you can go ahead and start.
All right, so again, I apologize for not having this in time to the clerk's office to get it on in the packet tonight. Like I said, wanted to get the most current information that I could. And what we have here is between the clerk's office, the electric department, and the finance department, these are what we identified as the 8 questions that needed follow-up from the city council work session. And there's not any particular order on them, and we can go through them item by item if you want, or It's kind of your will as far as how you want to do this. I would like to take a moment to try to clarify something. As far as the work session, I was wondering what the council is looking for as far as the air-to-air project. If you could clarify more as far as what it is.
Well, I might just say that, so PACCAB made a recommendation about having a program in place where there's rebates available.
Okay.
So I think we were looking, well, I would like to just have a discussion about that during the work session in public and see if there's support for that, and council can discuss it more. And I think I provided, or there's PACCAB information on how that, why it would make sense to have a rebate, because use of those air-to-air heat pumps, while it decreases fuel use, it actually increases electric use. So it shows the potential benefit there.
Okay, thank you. And that, I just wanted to make sure that it was not, what we were talking about was the heat loop system
No.
that sometimes is referred to. So with that, if I may ask Councilmember Baclan to restate your demand meter question.
Are we gonna save that for the work session or?
So were you, so I'll go back and ask you, so I thought you were saying you wanted to take the demand meters off our next work session. You were saying, no, you do want to have it on there?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Just the specific.
Go ahead.
So that, it was just it seemed that we got, at the end of the conversation we got to, it was you as the electric department manager who would make the final decision. So I wanted to know if you would think that having a control of, this is the reason why finance came with it, brought this forward to me, because as a recommendation, right? And this is why I believe that you should have a demand reader. So that way, this decision was not solely based on your judgment. It came from finance and the electric utility together. That's the only, does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, thank you. And so for just a little bit of clarification for Councilmember Kreitz, what we're talking about is some of the meters on our system are what are referred to as demand meters. If you look at the 4th page, it's the tariff, and that is how our rate schedule is broken down into the different groups. So you have residential, small general service, and large general service. If you look at the large general service, under the column for demand charge, you see $26.61. They're the only class that we have that gets charged demand. That's why we've been discussing this. And the way it is currently set up is that in the city code, it stipulates that the utility manager position is the one that has to make that decision. So to try to make it less subjective and more objective, the electric department came up with a demand meter policy that can be found on the city's website, and I could send it to the clerk and we can send it to you directly as well. But that outlines under what criteria a customer would be qualified for demand metering versus non-demand metering. Okay? So to go back to Councilmember Baclan's question, I don't have a problem with it. The way it is set up in the tariff here, it's very subjective. So we would need to change city code as well as the part about it being the utility manager making the decision. And I don't have a problem with that. But it would need to take quite a bit of legwork to come up with a solution or an alternative path.
So some of the questions that we asked was who is paying the 3rd Avenue, Nash Road, and street lights, and it's the city is paying for those.
Within the city limits.
So last time I was on council, I asked if in the evenings we could turn off every other one. and was told, no, there's a state requirement to have light that bright.
Two things on that, Mayor Terry. First of all, yes, the Third Avenue was constructed by the state to a specific lighting requirement. That's one, so they dictated that's how much lighting was required. Two, the circuits themselves are connected together, so the only way we'd be able to do that would be to go up and physically disconnect the head or take the bulb out. And we're in the process of changing over to LEDs as they burn out, and those do not have the function of being able to take the bulb out. The whole head is one unit, and so that would expose wires, which in our environment is probably not gonna help them last longer.
And through the city manager, but LEDs would bring down the cost of that electricity.
That's correct. However, they would bring down the extended cost, or the long-term cost, the upfront cost. The LEDs are more expensive than the.
Councilmember Buckland?
So those lights don't go to a central one meter?
They do. Some of them do. The ones on Third Avenue do. We're in the process of verifying that the ones, for example, on Fourth Avenue do. The ones on, say, the corner of Nash Road and Seward Highway do not. So most of the streetlights do, some of them do not.
Well, and I'm not that I'm advocating for this, but the state turned off some lights in Anchorage. I don't personally think that it would be safe. So regardless of what standards are built, I mean, I think there's some, as we're replacing the LEDs, maybe they don't need to have daylight on that street. Yes.
So, and there's one other thing I'd like to add to that conversation. We are in the process of verifying if we can get like a shield to cover the lights, both to direct the light in certain ways, but also we could possibly use those to cover the lights instead. I don't have enough information on that
And just
yet.
to clarify, I'm not saying I mind how bright they are, because it's an aesthetic thing. I think that I don't want to bill so basically the taxpayers are paying for how bright those are. But I do agree that light quality should be, they can be directed to be safer. Councilmember?
A new question.
That's fine, thank you.
So I'm just, on number 2, what is our TruGH bill versus what we're selling? I think this is just half of that question, right? Because this is the TruGH bill.
Well, what I tried to do was relate of what we get as far as a TruGH bill, and then the process from getting to the TruGH bill to where we sell it to our customers.
I think the main question was, what I think people wanted to see, I believe, was that they wanted to see what we paid, what we brought in, and what the difference was. I may have been wrong, but I thought, so that's what it says. What is our TruGH bill versus what we're selling? So what we paid for, what we sold it for, and what the difference was. So
that's really challenging on a month-to-month basis. What I suggest might be more clear is if we do a larger sample size of 12 months, 1 year, and then take averages, because what I indicated in here was that there's a 3-month lag time between bills that we get from TruGH versus bills that we send out to our customers.
But we could have gone back to, we could have went back to November and got something, or went back further. You just chose to go to January.
And I'm working with the finance department.
Well, this is January 2019, so you could still, this information would have been, we should be able to have that information, so whatever January 2019 was, what we sold, or what our total income was for January 2019 for that, what we collected, minus what we paid, and what the difference was in there, I think is what we wanted to know.
Yeah, and just for clarification, this is the February 2019 bill. Or excuse me, this is the February 2020 bill.
This is January.
And the credit on there was established by the BPMC.
Oh, the previous.
From the previous year, yeah. So yeah, sorry, I'm jumping around. I am working with the finance department, and we are trying to do that. It's just that because of the lag and the discontinuity in costs versus what we buy and what we sell, it's really challenging to relate that number in dollars. But we are trying.
Yeah, that's confusing already, because this is the fuel costs are from December 2019 for January,
For February.
February 2020.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
yeah, which is causing that 3-month lag.
So I have a question about the power factor. So I know, so you're saying a number of customers below 90% power factor and a timeline for transitioning them, and you're saying at this time we cannot accurately quantify the number of customers who have a power factor lower than 90%, but you know some of them, right?
We know some that we used to measure manually.
Can we be more aggressive and reach out to them to have them purchase what they need to do and fix what they need to do, because we're bearing the costs. So, I mean, we don't have to, invest all this money to identify every single person if we're not gonna be punitive. But if we know a number of people that are at that power factor, I think especially with the new person I don't know, sometimes when you get a new person in a department, there's not a lot they can hit the ground running. Maybe that person can start reaching out to them and have that conversation about fixing their power factor adjustment.
So we've actually already approached the 2 largest
good.
identified customers that have power factor problems and are working with them.
Okay. That's great to hear, thank you. So, thank you for following up. Oh, Councilmember Butts?
I just had one, I know that when we had our meeting, we didn't have finance there with us. So I'd go back to question 4 there too, just to make sure that if you live inside the city and you get power inside the city, you're charged 7% total on your taxes.
Right.
And if you live outside the city, but you're receiving power from the city, you get charged only a 3% tax.
That's correct. That's what the finance department shared with me. And apparently there's some things that are afoot that may change how that works. I guess Amazon and mailing packages and things like that may dynamically impact that. But I will ask finance for more of a write-up on that particular question.
And so that wouldn't change if somebody was living outside of the city, but their business was receiving power inside the city, they would still be paying that 7% tax.
So the way the finance department explained it to me is that where the residence or where the bill goes is what determines what gives a 7% tax city or a 3% tax borough.
Where the bill, or the power or the bill goes?
Where the power goes.
Where the power goes.
Sorry. Like I said, this is a subject I probably should not be talking extensively on.
Okay, so if somebody had, if somebody had been living within the city limits and having a business outside the city limits, they would only be paying 3% tax.
To the business.
Okay. All right, that's what I just wanted to make sure.
Well, let me just also thank you for following up on a number of these questions. I'm looking through my list. And so you're gonna frown, but you did a great job also with Councilmember Bucklawn and I. We took up your offer on that tour. So with our next meeting, and we can talk about things to talk about at that next meeting, I think we still want to talk about projects. And one project item at that the generator site is that fence.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about that as a project. I think that should be moved up. And we can talk about that as council, obviously. And also, don't make a face at me, but knowing that those generator guys that we don't have folks necessarily on call. So maybe that's something we can discuss too. And I know that you feel like that definitely is a budget constraint on your end, so maybe that's something council needs to address within the budget.
Can we have finance at this meeting also?
So, Councilmember Butts, to the administration at our next meeting, could we invite finance to come? Would that be helpful? Okay. So, so let's talk about, so let's go back to Councilmember Baclan. You wanted to do a better job of kind of focusing what we're going to talk about at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's
Yes.
get back to you.
So I think if we struck a couple of things out of there and we went with a more clear question number 4, or no, we got number 4 done, right? Customer bills were already addressed. And it's actually put in there twice, clarify billing. I'd leave in pole replacement. I would strike update on the air-to-air project.
Oh, well, see, I would still like to see that.
Oh, okay.
So that has to do with the rebates that Port and Commerce Advisory Board suggested. And I know one other thing that you're working from that maybe not, I went back and watched it, but maybe not everyone has seen the follow-up from that PACCAT meeting. So there still might be more questions with some of those items. So maybe instead of striking things, let's talk about what we'd like to see at the next meeting. So I'll just start off by saying, I'd like to see an update on potential rebates with that air-to-air, residential air-to-air units. We can review the policy on the demand meter.
I think the policy of the demand meter just was specific to the who had the final decision. It just, I know there was people who had questions about that, and I don't know if you agree or not that it would just be a little bit easier if it was, this is the reasoning from finance, this was the reasoning from the electric department, and put that together. And that reasoning wasn't just coming from you, it was coming from a check and a balance.
Councilmember Osenga, did you?
Just a quick question. Isn't it either it is or it's not? I mean, isn't it kind of
data driven?
Right, yeah. The way the demand meter policy is set up is that it's really based on data analysis. So if it's a series of if-then statements, and if you meet this criteria, then you're here. If you meet this criteria, then we put you here. So,
and the code specifies it will be the utility manager that does it.
But I think, so I'm just going to interject, so at the meeting, we understand that, but there's a lot of questions about how that happens, right? And if that was happening in finance, or if we needed to hire someone else to do it, and what that looked like. So I think having that clarification at the next meeting would be helpful. Councilmember Baclan?
I think that already would have came from finance anyway, so the justification would have been there. It just wouldn't have been on one person.
Right.
I understand what you're saying. I totally get it. All you had to do was take finance and put that together, and then it didn't say the electric department made this decision.
I see.
So it would take the responsibility off of one person that was already provided information from finance, and it would put the finance and I will draft that change, and then we'll bring it forward and we'll see what happens.
Okay, so how should that be worded for the work session?
So
Current demand meter project, or current demand meter policy?
Yeah.
if I may. So
Yes,
what-
administration.
What we're looking for is basically a change to the demand meter policy stating that it's contingent on finance review. That, or finance recommendation.
Finance and electric department recommendation.
Okay.
Wait,
So it's to change it.
and at the work session, we'll look at that. Councilmember Butts?
So we're just asking for a change of policy to the on-demand meter.
It's not even a change in policy, because that recommendation already would have come from finance.
That's correct.
Because they're gonna say, there's this spike in power, there's something wrong, they are not on the right demand, or they should be on demand. And then when that recommendation would come forward to the electric department, then that decision was already made by finance and then the electric department would agree. And then that one decision just wasn't by one person. it would come from two people.
So let me just clarify to say it would be language clarifying the policy
Yes.
in being more, have more explanation with it.
I believe I understand.
Okay. And then, so, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I definitely, we're talking about what's going to be on.
Yes, thank
Yes,
you.
definitely keep the current status process of selling the electrocution.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Yes.
And I might say, I know most of your slides were against selling the utility, and I'm not necessarily for selling the utility, but I think it would be good to have pros and cons. And I also don't think we need to say, okay, Seward Utility owns it now, next day it's someone else. I mean, it would be interesting to look at maybe if it's possible to work with folks on a joint venture for a number of years, and how that might help with some of our transmission line costs, or opening up the customer base to additional users. That's kind of what I was after.
Yeah, and I apologize, not all of that was from me. I had requests from people in my department to include some of those,
Yeah, and
some of those items.
And you don't have to apologize, that's fine, that was just my opinion. So, I mean, that was fine, that was just my clarification. I would like to see on there, which I know, thank you, Councilmember Buckland, but a clarifying billing was actually a little different than the bills. But the clarifying billing had to do more with the classifications, and we did cover that at the last meeting. But I also think that it would be helpful again, and it used to be on the website, a rundown of what you were looking at with your bill, and I'm just looking to the clerk to see if that got put back up on the website.
It should be on the,
Okay.
on the utility page, still. Yeah.
So that's a question for finance, but I believe the intent was that they were going to start doing that again once they were more adequately staffed.
But I think there was a document made up that had
Just
already done.
How to read your bill.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah. Councilmember Buckland?
2 questions. The first one was, I've lived in a lot of different places and got a lot of different electric bills. Are we utilizing all the tools that our programming has to clarify billing on the bill? Because sometimes I would get bills that have like different show, a chart of how, on the bottom of our bill it just says numbers, right? And then some have like a chart of how much you've used. Some will tell you like how much you use at different parts of the day. So you can be like, oh, well, I use all this power here, maybe I spread it out, or I'm using too much at this time. So,
So
I'm just wondering if there's any other tools that are in the software or in that structure that can help people understand their billing or get more understanding of electricity.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Buckland, what you're talking about is smart metering, actually. And the meters that we have currently do not have that capability. However, there is some add-on software that other robot utilities are using that would potentially give us that capability without changing out all the meters. So we are researching that, but we're way, way, way too far to start having those conversations, I'm afraid.
And the second question is,
Councilmember Buckland?
just clarifying, I want to go back to the billing with what we pay for and what we bring in. And I don't know if that's on a budget, if it's on a budget document, if it, shows on a difference of what we make. But if we could get just a clarification of that, either 1 month that said, this is what we paid for electricity, this is what we brought in from electricity, and this is what we made from it. So that's the one clear one. I think that's just like half the answer there on this sheet, because it directly says that, but then it doesn't finish it up on the other side. So if we can get an answer on that, maybe go back a little bit further so that we can get a month that's farther behind so we can have the comparison on those two. But what I learned today was that we pay for fuel from last year, so.
So, can I at least make a suggestion that we do 3 months? That way, because what Chugach bills us for fuel, for example, won't show up on our bills until 3 months later. So if we do a 3-month comparison, then at least we can get
With the
to-
3 separate months and then
Yes.
3 separate incomes.
So let me
Yes.
clarify something really quick. So are you saying that, so say we get billed for the fuel 3 months later, that doesn't get accrued back to the month that it was actually expended on? There's a 3-month delay with everything, so you never
That's
catch it
correct.
up again.
That's correct.
So you're saying if we look at a quarter,
Yeah.
would be an adequate number, and that would work for you?
I would rather the 3 because then you could see how the fuel charges change, because when we talked about the power factor or the COPA changes, other utilities on that COPA they don't change it as often as we do. So they're changing it on either quarterly or less. So we could see the difference on how much that COPA is going up and down.
So if I
Administration.
can, sorry, if I can clarify, the COPA actually with all the utilities changes on month to month based on what fuel they're using, and all the utilities in Alaska are using natural gas. So that fluctuates on month to month. However, their utility charge, which would be similar to our sewer utility charge, can only change based on the RCA approval, which can be up to 4 times a month, or 4 times a year, excuse me.
If they go back to the regulatory commission to have it changed,
That's
which most times they don't do. Because it costs money.
Chugach is the one that I've tracked the most, and they generally go back to the RCA 2 to 3 times a year.
Okay, so do you think we have enough do you have enough information to have a title for that?
If you don't mind, can we just run through one by one and eliminate? My understanding is the first, discuss electric department rates is struck.
Yes.
Okay, classifications is struck.
Yes.
Utility infrastructure management?
That's the fence, right?
Yeah, let's leave that on there,
Yeah.
please.
Okay. Current contract regarding power factor adjustment?
We've talked about that a little bit. Maybe it sounds like you did answer the question, but maybe we can talk about it at that meeting just again, because I know it's such an issue.
Okay.
Or not, and it's on there. Current status
Skipping
process of
down
selling the
to-
electric utility
Yep.
should stay on there.
I've got that, the demand meter policy and the air-to-air clarifying billing. Did you want that to have that included, what's on the website, just for
Yeah,
information?
yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. And then timeline or schedule for pole replacement.
I think we spoke about that at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that can be struck.
Okay. Thank you.
So now we have to look at a date. Or we get to look at a date.
We used up March.
So what, I guess we did talk about the 23rd.
23rd.
That's where we got stalled out.
That's where we
Yeah.
got stalled out. So we'll say we have the title for the 23rd at 5 o'clock. Okay.
At 5? Sorry.
Yes.
5.
We mentioned 5:15 earlier, so
5.
Let's
Okay.
do 5. Madam Clerk, do you need a vote on that? Do you need a motion and a vote? Or are you all set?
No, that was a discussion item.
Okay, thank you. Great, thanks everyone. It took us a while to get there, but I really appreciate Electric Department following up
Thank you.
with questions and also ongoing discussion, very much. And I know that the Finance Department was working on things too. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is vote and appoint 2 applicants for the Planning and Zoning Commission with terms to expire February 2023, so they're in for the long haul. Applicants are Cindy Eklund, Jesse Bradshaw, and Liz DeMoss. That starts on page 95 of your packet. Madam Clerk, would you go ahead and outline what we should do?
Council, in front of you are ballots that have the 3 candidate names on them. Please mark 2 names, sign it, and pass it to me.
So before we do that, is there any discussion, Councilmember?
Yeah, the initial email only had 2 candidates, Liz DeMoss and Cindy Eklund, and then there was another candidate that was added.
Jesse Bradshaw was
The
here.
initial, email,
From Jessica,
well, she sent them, right, she
Yeah.
did send that. She didn't receive the Jesse Bradshaw application. I received it.
okay,
That's why it's included in the packet.
okay.
Yeah.
And that was included, and that was
In
received?
time,
Yep. It was received on,
in time and complete.
the application is complete. The financial disclosure form is incomplete, but that's not predicated on
Okay,
being accepted.
thank you.
Reading the ballots, the first ballot, we have 1 vote for Eklund, 1 vote for Liz DeMoss. 1 vote for Eklund, 1 vote for Liz DeMoss. 1 vote for Eklund, 1 vote for Liz DeMoss. 1 vote for Eklund, 1 vote for Liz DeMoss. 1 vote for Cindy Eklund, 1 vote for Liz DeMoss, and 1 vote for Cindy Eklund, and 1 vote for Liz DeMoss.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So now, since we have unanimous on the 2, we're looking for a motion, please. So I'll make a motion to appoint Cindy Eklund and Liz DeMoss to the Planning and Zoning Commission with terms to expire February 2023.
I'll second it.
I think we're ready for a vote.
Voting on those appointments, Kreitz,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Olsega,
Yes.
Buckland,
Yes.
Lutz,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
Congratulations, they are appointed.
Thank you very much. Informational items and reports, ongoing city project and goal list starts on page 100. Are there any questions or comments to administration regarding that? Next on the agenda is January 2020 City and Providence financials. And those are in your packet starting on page 104. Are there any questions or comments regarding that? I might just say thank you, even with the financial having the transfers and new staff, that having those in our packet in a timely manner, well appreciated, and thank you very much. Next on the agenda is citizen comments. There's no sign-in for this comment period, so you are welcome to come to the podium and state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Cindy Eklund, inside the city limits. Thank you. I apologize for the lengthy rezoning process. I think we're all better versed now, and we'll have a better time the next time one comes forward. I do want to state that the salmon stream, I did not see salmon in the salmon stream this year, and I noticed that the culverts had been raised and the salmon can't get into the culverts from the lagoon, and I asked Public Works about it, and they said that they have stopped that process because they don't want to attract bears. So there are no salmon in that stream any longer. That could change back again, but that's the case there. And to remind you that the alleys are busier and busier all the time. That's not a complaint, that was a fact. But and thank you for your trust in me to do my due diligence on the commission, and as stated, I would be happy to continue representing to the borough.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Hi, Liz DeMoss, Inside Seward City Limits. I just want to say thank you for voting me into PNC, and I'm really looking forward to working with everybody.
Did I see a hand in the back wishing to speak?
I'm Regis, outside city limits, we're talking as the harbor master. So I know you're gonna have your reports for the Juneau trip, but I just gonna give you an update on, my part of the Juneau trip is going with the Harbor Master Association. So we were talking about the facility grant program and trying to continue that going, because I think the money's gonna go away soon, that's why we're pushing to get the harbor done here. We also are working with the commercial fishermen, the United Fishermen of Alaska. There's House Bill 185 and Senate Bill 145. so that fishermen, when they register for every year for their license, they automatically register the vessel, so they don't have to do it twice. So we're just kind of narrowing it down. We got full support from mostly everybody. And then another one about the facility grant program, there's an ICAP. This is, some of the council members might remember when we had our last project, the ICAP was raised from 2% to 3.5, then again I think to 4.2. So we had to come back before council and ask for more money. So we're asking the state to just add it in the beginning and don't raise it. The reason was because actually Rango got hit pretty hard, 8% increase on a $5 million project. That's a lot of money to have to come up with. So we were working with the state with that one. And you were talking about your DC trip. You're going to have a meeting 7 days prior. You might want to do it a little sooner so we can give the lobbyists more time to make appointments. It might be a little, so just a suggestion that maybe do it in March so we can give them more time to make our appointments through DC, because there's a lot of people running around there. And so one thing that's really exciting is the state actually started a new division from DNR. They are now starting to track derelict vessels. So this young man, he's going to go around and start getting this vessel's here, start tracking ownership, and then it's a huge step forward on derelict vessels. I know we got rid of mostly all ours, but there's a lot throughout the whole state and people are just dumping them. So anyways, that was really exciting that DNR actually has somebody that's just what they do. So yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else looking to speak? Hearing and seeing none. Next on the agenda is council and administration comments and response to citizen comments. I'll start with administration. Did you have any comments?
No, thank you for the process. I know it's been long and hard, but I also would like to remind everyone that Planning and Zoning does have a work session coming up on Thursday at 6 o'clock to discuss walkable murals.
Good, very good, thank you. I'll start on the right side of the dais. Councilmember Kreitz.
Second meeting, and I spent a lot of time researching last night and today, calling and asking questions, and it was nice to be in the process and learning, and very informative.
Thank you. Far left, Councilmember Baclawn.
I know our reports will be for Juneau in the next packet. However, I wanted to say that the mayor did an amazing job representing Seward. From the minute we arrived in Juneau, she got us a ride to the hotel, to downtown. She is amazing, speaking with all of the legislators, meeting with new people, even connecting to some of the people that we met in AML in the winter conference. And Seward should be very proud to have her representing us at these legislative sessions, because she's very knowledgeable about the history of Seward, about individuals in Seward, property, railroad, everything. And she does an amazing job representing our city there. And people walk by us and they're like, Seward! And the same for Harbor Master and Harbor Master Norm, who worked, Harbor Master Regis, who worked very hard at lots of meetings, and the city manager as well, meeting with the lobbyists and going up and down that hill. It's a lot. It's a lot of altitude in Juneau. We had a great time. There's so many meetings coming up, so get out there, go to one, participate, be involved in your community. We all love Seward, so pick one thing that you can get out there, do, be involved with, whether it's a sustainable practice, prevention, anything. Pick something, get out there, do it. Because we all care about Seward, we all need help, we all need more volunteers. So thank you everyone for being here tonight as well, and for those who spoke. Thank you.
Councilmember Butts.
First off, congratulations again to Cindy and Liz, both there too. I started off on planning and zoning too, so it's a great thing, and I really like that one too. I want to thank everybody. I know that a few people have left too, but thank everybody that showed up tonight too to voice their opinions. We value everybody's opinions and their emails and everything else like this too, and I really do. I get a chance to read them all. It takes a while, but I get the chance to read them all. Wash your hands. That's all.
Councilmember Osenga?
Just like to say thanks to everyone who came in and did have a discussion with us tonight. I'd like to thank Griffin for coming in with his 2020 census information, and congratulations to Cindy and Liz.
Vice Mayor McClure?
Well, I also want to thank the three that applied, and congratulations to the two of you. And I really appreciate Cindy's willingness to stay on with the Borough Planning Commission, having been the one before her being on the Planning Commission. It's that drive and all that, but it's really important thing to do. I received a nice compliment on Sunday morning. Well, actually, too bad Doug's not here, but it was a compliment from someone who had spent a few days in Anchorage on business that Seward streets are amazing compared to Anchorage's, and it was a big shout out to our folks that keep our streets and sidewalks cleared. And I don't think you realize it until you go to Anchorage and can't drive around town because you're not making it there. And it's whatever. Anyway, I said that what they should do is send an email to all the council, everybody that was present there, so we could hear a compliment for once. But I'm saying it publicly because that was a nice compliment. And also, if you want something to do, there's many things to do in Seward. But this Thursday at 7, Lee Pileski is doing our presentation for the RBHS fourth Thursday presentation. He's doing it on the Iditarod and giving some facts and counteracting some of the fables about the Iditarod, and it's always a really entertaining time. So if you want to go to something interesting and fun, Thursday at 7 at the library community room. And that's, I think, all I got.
Great, thank you. I first want to congratulate the winners of the Chamber Award again. So Amy, that's why I get to be last.
Okay.
Amy Hankins and Tony our very own Councilmember Tony Bucklan, and I just want to brag on him for a minute. I guess it's Mutual Admiration Society, but he goes to so many meetings and puts his heart and soul into this community. And being recognized at the Chamber was just such an honor for me to even be there and see him being recognized, because it was a big group of people being nominated, and all the nominees were well-deserved, but, Amy and Tony were top of the list. And I also want to say, spoiler alert, just proud to have Tony there working in Juneau. It's very helpful to have two people. Sometimes I get a little, enthusiastic about a topic, and Tony is able to, we're able to riff off each other and able to make sure that we're representing the community jointly. Business Person of the Year, Kevin Lane, and he thanked his wife Stacy. Obviously, that's a team. And then Site Improvement again, Scotty Ryerson. And Board of War, Cindy Clerk. So all those people work so hard in our community for little fanfare, so having them recognized is amazing. Thank you to the three applicants for P&Z. Cindy, for your long years of service. Liz, we're very excited to have you. And Jesse, we all know it's tough to put ourselves out there. I think she would be excellent, and I just hope she hangs on. There's always a ton of vacancies. We know who she is. I think she would be excellent, so we appreciate her applying. Seward Bear Creek Flood Service Area Board, they have a project for the 2nd Avenue drainage. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then I wonder if we might just, I do think Norm had some good advice to maybe change our DC lobbyist input to that second meeting in March. But will you be there for that, Councilmember Butts?
Yes, I will, yeah.
Okay, would that be, is that all right with you?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's schedule that for the second meeting in March. And finally, I know she's gonna kick me under the dais, but I just wanna wish our Vice Mayor Sue McClure a happy birthday. So now we're going into executive session to evaluate the city clerk. We will need a motion to go into executive session. If we could make that motion for 9:25 so we can use the restroom. Actually, I'm just gonna do it. If we could, if we could go into executive session at 9:25 to include just the council and the clerk to evaluate the city clerk. And thank you to the city attorney for coming down today. Do we need, so I made a motion, do we have a second? Second? Unanimous consent?
Yes. So early. Yes.
Okay.
So we have 5 minutes here.
Recess at 9:20.